Good evening. This is the opening of the Public Safety Committee. We'll stand to pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members of the subcommittee. Councilor Guanasso is absent. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo?
Here.
Here, and Chairman Patch.
Yeah.
Here, quorum is not present. This will just be an informational meeting only, no deliberation.
I'd just like to inform the audience that we do have Councilor Keefe here and Councilor McKenna, Councilor Morabito, and that's it. First thing we'll take up is the 18281 motion by Councilor Janino and McKenna that the mayor requests the DPW to investigate the feasibility of using a more visible paint color for crosswalks. The Revere Beautification Committee and the Beachmont Improvement Committee would like to see a brighter color such as red to draw more attention to the crosswalks. On this matter, we do have a forum now because Councilor President, Ms. Jessica Janino is with us, so we have a forum. I just want to advise the public that this is more of an informational meeting that we'll see if we're going to have people come up and speak. They have been working on the project. Julie Damaro from the Community Development and Superintendent Agenzio from the DPW. Julie, you want to start?
Julie Damaro, Healthy Community Initiatives Office. We have been actually in the process before this motion was brought before the council, looking at colorizing crosswalks, bike lanes, and looking at different types of materials that we could use along the Revere roadways that would not wear away so easily. We have found, right now there is a bid out for thermoplastic material for all of our parking bays and our crosswalks, and that will last 3 years on the roadway. We're also looking at another product that it's a recyclable glass that can be melted into any type of color you want. Somerville and Cambridge are using that along their roadways to stripe bike boxes and bike lanes. Also, college campuses use it to kind of colorize in their crosswalks. So this is something that we've been looking into. It's a little bit more expensive than your traditional striping, but the markings do last 3 years. We have looked into a couple of features regarding the appropriate color for ADA compliance for people who are colorblind or have other types of vision disabilities, and that color would be either yellow or green. The red, the blues, those are not compliant because they don't show a contrast on the roadway when the pedestrian is crossing.
Good evening. I passed out a few papers there to kind of show you the color options. As Julie said, the red and the blues probably won't be appropriate. There is quite a significant cost difference using this colorized material. A standard crosswalk that we have in Revere costs us about $200 to repaint. We do that twice a year, which comes out to about $400. To do a completely colorized crosswalk would go between $1,800 and $2,000. However, these last 3 years. So if you price it out over 3 years, painting it would probably cost about $1,200. Colorized one once every 3 years would probably go about $2,000. I spoke with the company today. We've gone out to bid on this work. And they're opening the bids on October 5th, so we can get a better idea of cost and price at that time. The company has recently done quite a bit of work at a lot of college campuses. I think the green one that I passed out to you was at Northeastern University. Kind of the rainbow one, I believe that's from New York City. New York City has spent about $80 million in the last couple of years colorizing their crosswalks because they had a few fatalities there. So this has proven to be, this material, probably the most visual. It has ground glass in it, and it reflects at night off the lights and off the sunlight in the daytime. So.
Any councilors have a question? Councilor Janino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one quick one. I know this was a concern before about the texture of them and if they would be slippery. So is there any information on that? Because we just want to make sure it doesn't become a skating rink.
Yes, these are ground glass and it's an epoxy. A few years back, well, quite a few years back during the Hass administration, we did attempt to colorize some of the crosswalks, and that was one of the biggest complaints, that they were very slippery. Mass DOT, I think, has since, it's illegal to paint them in, which is using regular paint because it is so slippery. But this material has a lot of traction to it and has been approved by.
Perfect.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nighttime, you said there's glass so it reflects, but green, would that be too dark for a walkway, do you think, Julie?
So the green that you would want to consider is the one that's in the picture for the bike lanes that Paul passed out, because that you can see. The more you ride over it, the more reflective it gets. And then it would actually be overlaid with, so the white in there is actually thermoplast, and that's very reflective. That seems to be the best practice, is that they put the epoxy down, the recyclable glass, and then the thermoplast would go over it. So between the two, you would get a reflection on both.
Great, and I think this is wonderful. I just, I mean, you're working twice a year, painting crosswalks. You don't have to work for 3 years, or maybe even 4, you know. So I think in the long run, you'll save lives and you'll save dollars in workmanship too. So I think this is a great idea. Thank you for researching this.
Any other councilors? I just want to say that, first of all, that I got an email from the chair of the Revere Commission of Disabilities, Ralph DeChico. He said he could not make the meeting. But I know he's working along with Julie and Paul, and he's got concerns about the problems with disability, people having trouble with the colors.
So we're currently working with a family right now who their children are going blind, and they've been asking for a while for us to colorize the crosswalks on their way home from school at certain intersections. And we've been kind of going back to figure out what the best practice is. I believe Paul passed out a sheet that has a picture of a crosswalk with a standard ladder design, and then in the middle is the yellow. That seems to be, in all of the ADA publications that we've looked at, that seems the standard when you're trying to look at somebody who has some type of vision disability. His other issue with it is he wants to make sure that that they are visible and that they are serving the purpose. But his last issue was also the timing of the lights, and that's a different discussion for this day. But having pedestrian push lights that are actually voice activated, so if somebody who is blind is getting ready to cross, they would hear walk sign is on, the traffic would stop, and they would be able to cross with confidence and get to the other side with knowing that the traffic has stopped.
Very good, Julie. Well, like I told you on the phone, that I'm for the painting. I actually went in Saugus and looked at theirs, and I liked the looks of it. And but I don't know why it came before the Public Safety Council, because we can agree to like it, but as far as finance, this would be up to the mayor. And I would recommend to the mayor that he put together a committee with you guys and the beautification committee in Beachmont to pick out the color, and then if he needs us to okay for the money, I'd be all for it.
So currently, my office was given in the recent round of capital improvement, investment spending and itemization, my department got $164,000 for this project alone. Right now, we're looking at Broadway as the whole corridor. We're looking to put in bike boxes, stripe the bike lane where it intersects with the cross street onto Broadway. And we're also looking at to really redoing some of the crosswalk markings within the street. We have several markups. We've been working on it now for the last couple of months. We've been playing around with colors. We've been looking at how it would look on the street, how it would function. There's certain intersections that we're really taking into consideration because of the traffic patterns and the number of cars that go through there. So that is something that we are working on for Broadway. Depending on the weather and where this bid gets awarded, those markings might not go down until the spring because it has to be 58 degrees or higher for this to go down and actually stay down and adhere to the road.
So Julie, you saying that you already have funding for this?
I have 164 just for this year, and that money mostly will be spent on Broadway.
Okay, well, if the council, if the committee wants to, I recommend that we send a letter to the mayor saying that we're for doing this, and if he needs any further finance, he can come before us. Is that okay? Do we have to vote on this, Madam Clerk? Or is it?
Will you be presenting a new motion to the full city council?
No, actually, you tell me. I don't think we have to do that. I think,
Mr. Chairman?
pardon
Can we
me?
vote it out favorably, and then the
Well-
council can vote on it tonight?
Right, all right, we'll do that. We need a vote?
Sure, so this is on a motion of the Public Safety Subcommittee.
All right, first of all, Councilor Granasso's here, he's on the committee. He's been here listening.
Mr. Chairman, whatever happened to the old-fashioned white that highly illuminated and everyone in the world uses it, and people like me with glaucoma find it if we're talking about public safety, then white's the color. I don't care, if red might look pretty, green might look pretty, blue, baby blue would look nice, but I'm trying to drive safely home on a darkly lit highway, and on Broadway, when I see white, I think that's, that gives me the perfect guideline. And I think the city, in its wisdom, could save a ton of money, and we could also probably save that extra money that we save and do the other streets that don't have any of this particular guidance that we all need, especially people with night vision problems. And I know several, you don't have to be a senior citizen to have a night vision problem. I've had this since I was 22. And it's a problem for all of us. But I think the nice, bright white works wonders. And they're just doing it in one particular highway, and I said, thank God, this is absolutely beautiful. I can go right down the middle of the street, and I know where I'm going. Once we start getting fancy with all these colors, I think we're losing sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make people traverse the community in a public fashion that's safety to all of us. All I have to say, Mr. Chairman, thanks for your listening to me.
Paul, would you like to answer that? Would we get more done for the buck for we stay on white?
Well, if you continue to paint white, yes, certainly it'd be less expensive. Maybe we can look into a more reflective white rather than a color. That might be an option, a more permanent solution rather than paint. That's either thermoplastic or white that uses this material but isn't colorized. You know, they have that also. So we don't necessarily have to go with a color. You could stay with white but use this different material, the ground glass in the thermoplastic. That's so they would last a little bit longer.
Councilor Rizzo?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to be the person who said I don't want colors or whatever, but I agree. When it comes to crosswalks and things like that, they're there for a reason. They're there for safety purposes. And to me, white really stands out. I mean, I don't know, you would know, Superintendent Argenzio, much more than I would as to what's the safest color. I know they have, you know, certain vehicles, they say that this is the safest color vehicle and so on and so forth. I don't know what the safest color crosswalk is, but for me, I'm just interested in the safety of people who use those crosswalks. And, you know, if it's equally as safe with a color, I don't have a problem. Paint it whatever color that you want, but you know, if it does present issues to people maybe with disabilities, or if it isn't as safe as a color might be, then I would prefer just to stay with whatever the safest color is, so that, you know, obviously people, driving can identify they're coming up on a crosswalk or coming up on a lined part of the street. You know, you just want to know that people are able to see it. So I agree. I wasn't even going to speak, Mr. Chairman, but after Councilor Guanasso spoke, those were the thoughts, some of the thoughts that were running through my head. I'm just interested in public safety and whatever the safest thing is. And as you alluded to, if we can use white, but use a material so that it doesn't fade as fast. Like I know even coming here today, coming by, and I drive by it 5 times a day, Central Ave and Broadway and so on, and those lanes it's really worn down. And so if you're not familiar with the city and you're coming, down Broadway, you don't know that you've got to get in this left lane, that you can't go straight. And, not that it presents a huge problem, but sometimes people don't know. They continue to go straight, and there's a kind of a standoff between the cars trying to pull in from the right to get back onto Broadway, straightening out. So whatever, Mr. Chairman, I think is the safest color, and the best color for public safety, I would be in favor of, whatever that color might be. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if I could suggest, as Julie said, this material that we're contemplating won't go down until the spring. So we could maybe agree on the new material, and then we have some time to discuss colors. I know, different people have different opinions as to what'll brighten the city up or what have you. So we can agree on the new material. We'll probably have the winter to talk about it, discuss colors, not colors. Maybe we can do some coloring in bike lanes, not necessarily crosswalks, kind of.
Councilor.
So maybe we can do that. And,
Councilor
as far as
Giannino?
I really can't say this is the safest color. I'm not prepared to make a color choice. We'll certainly research it.
I don't blame you.
And there's a lot of research out there as to what's the most visible, and we'll delve into that, and we'll have some discussion on it. And by the time it goes down in the spring, we can come up with something.
Councilor Giannino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm listening to everything going back and forth, and I think we all have public safety in mind, which is, of course, our goal. But I think there's definitely a difference when you drive through some communities and see the old white paint versus there are communities that have that reflective white paint, which I'm guessing is this material that you're speaking of. It almost looks like, for the people at home, if you see a construction worker with like a jacket on, those reflective stripes, the crosswalk actually has that reflectiveness to it. So regardless, I love the idea of a color, of course, but worst case scenario, I think it's a really good option to either way upgrade to a better material. I think you're saving, we're talking about just the paint. So if we're doing it at $400 a year plus labor, you're not counting labor, you're just talking materials, versus doing it once every 3 years, which is, like, I don't know, a sixth of the labor, plus a little bit of increase in the material. I think that that's a better, more cost-effective solution in the long run. It also, in your already strained department, saves you a little bit of manpower, so you're not doing something twice a year every year. And if we could save the color, maybe for our central business districts, maybe we put the color along the beach and on Broadway and near Shirley Ave and near the train stations and areas that there are people traversing the city to draw to the focal points. That's an option. I don't think every side street necessarily has to be a color, but I think that we should definitely invest in a better material. And I think that it is more cost-effective in terms of labor and the material in the long run. Just my input after listening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with my counselor, Counselor Janino. I think that's a wonderful idea, but I just wanted to know, do you know if not adding a color would diminish the price of the,
I don't think the price is in the color, it's more in the material that's used. It may be a little bit,
because if it's cheaper just to do a reflective white, it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of a standard white, which we use. So if it knocks it down a couple of notches, you know, I think that would be great.
Okay, like I say, we can, because of the time of the year, it doesn't look like we'll be doing this until the spring, so we certainly have time to research it and come up with a definitive answer.
Thank you.
Okay, well, maybe we'll leave it, that we'll vote on the reflection paint, and that Julian Arthur and definitely Ralph DeChico from the Disability Committee will work together to come up with what's best with the color and at a later date and come back before the council. Maybe we should just, do we have to vote on this, Arthur, Paul? Because I was going to say, we could just table it and then sometime before the spring,
Mr. Chairman, please table it because there are other questions asked of me that I just got a text on that I'd like to address also in future conversations. So could you please table this?
Okay. All in favor of tabling this? We'll table this for a later date. Let's run out of time here. The next thing on the agenda, 18290.
Council Order 18-290, there was a motion presented by Councilor Morabito and Councilor Keefe that the mayor conduct a feasibility study to implement LED smart crosswalks throughout the city. Further, that grants should be looked at in order to launch this smart program.
Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Keefe and I put this forward after listening to conversation between the council about painting new crosswalks throughout the city. We think this is having smart LED crosswalks throughout the city is something that we should look into going forward. They are responsive road surfaces. Basically, they react to vehicles and pedestrians in real time. My main concern was whether they're weatherproof or plow resistant, and these surfaces are. They're actually, there's a base plate embedded into the roadway, which makes it snow plow resistant. So all this motion is asking is for the mayor to look into a feasibility study, see how much it would cost, or also to look to see if there's any grants available that could get this program implemented. I know there are some vendors who would probably want to see it try out a test pilot with our city. So it's, at the end of the day, it's up to the mayor, but I'd like the council's the support in the subcommittee.
Anybody else want to speak on this? Councilor Keefe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Beto pretty much summed it up. You know, I know that there's just a lengthy conversation on the colors of the crosswalk, so I'm not necessarily certain we want to get into the debate right now, but I think it's, again, it's something worth looking into. We have to continue to find ways to make our roads safer and using in the crosswalks, making them easier to use, but also safer for the residents of the city. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I add one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Also, I would like to add, earlier, Councilor Guanasso brought up the issue of pedestrians or drivers with glaucoma. These smart LED crosswalks are also, they have reduced contrast sensitivity, which is actually, it's good, it's actually helps, it makes the lights more visible to those with glaucoma and less of a strain on their eyes.
All right, so on this, the motion is to send it to the mayor. All in favor, all opposed? On the affirmative, yes. No further business. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you.